doing this for a little bit, and my counterpart in Newbra is Robin. So obviously we're available to ask any questions, or we can provide the answers, or direct it to the Greenway staff that can do so. But this is our third of these meetings, the first of which occurred in 2012 or so, we believe, or maybe 2013. But and if anybody was at the Nunic meeting on Monday, these are important for a lot of reasons. We don't know what people's concerns are unless we hear them. And second, they listen and act into the best interest that can be for the neighborhood and the Greenway. A prime example is shade was a big concern at this inaugural meeting a couple of years ago. As a result, we had planted trees on the Greenway and the North End parks. We've inserted a lot of umbrellas along the way. So, I mean, little things like that go a long way, I think, in improving the relationship and between the neighborhood and the Greenway. So, in an effort to continue doing that, that's why we have these meetings. But I'll let Jesse start us off, I guess. So, thanks.
I'm Jesse Brackenbury. I am the executive director of the Greenway Conservancy. Thanks for coming out tonight. It's one more cold night. Actually, tonight kind of feels warm relative to what we've had. So, thanks anyway. Thanks for coming out on a warm night. I wanted to acknowledge Maria from Senator Petroselli's office, and that actually is something that we weren't going to talk about tonight, but ought to offer thanks to her. Is Senator Petroselli and Representative Michaelwitz have actually co-sponsored a bill that would name the Greenway the state's official organic public park, which I think it's probably unlikely to pass, but it's a nice gesture. It's a nice recognition for us, for the community. So thanks. Also wanted to acknowledge Ford from Newra, and Phil from Nunic, and Phil's wife on our staff, Kelly, who's fabulous, from the community here. So we're delighted to be out here. We hope that tonight is, in many ways, kind of a celebration, at least the first half of it. We have tried, in doing these three meetings, we've tried to listen and then come back with, okay, here are the things that we heard you say, and here are the things that we did. I think tonight, we hope, everybody will be excited, because a lot of the things that we previewed a year ago and took input on, we're here to talk about moving forward with them. And it's a big set of improvements, and it's, I think, pretty exciting. Then we also want to hear your feedback on what we've done with programming and how we hope that's been kind of responsive to what we've been hearing, and also talk about the new parcels along the entire Greenway corridor, but most specifically in the North End here, that the Conservancy is taking on as a responsibility from Massachusetts Department of Transportation, our landlord and funder. So let's see. That is then this agenda here. That's me. We have a number of people from our staff here. I know many of you in the audience, but not all of you. And so when we're done, if you don't know me, please come up and introduce yourself. We'll talk about the North End improvements with Bob Stigberg, our Superintendent of Maintenance and Security, as well as Stu Schilleber, our Superintendent of Horticulture. And then Steve, our Director of Park Operations, will talk about the new lease parcels before Charlie talks a little bit about what we've been doing in programming and hears your thoughts. And then we can take questions on any of these topics or anything else. To tee up Bob and the set of North End improvements, as I said, a year ago, we talked about a bunch of things in the park that were broken or that needed upgrading, and kind of acknowledged. 5 years in, it's a shame that these things are broken and need upgrading. Most of them, honestly, were not the result of regular wear and tear, which that's what you'd hope 5 years in. The problem is a number of the things were designed wrong or installed wrong in the original construction. And what is the sort of great news of tonight is that we have received we are going to be doing $400,000 worth of repairs and upgrades in the North End parks. Basically, the slate of things that we talked about before, most of them will be able to achieve that money. Not all of them, and we can get into all that's included and what things are having to wait. The $400,000 is funded through a competitive grant awarded to the Conservancy from the Massachusetts Cultural Council. They are administering it's a tourist dollars program, and I think it's a real win that this money is coming here. They don't traditionally, this funding pot is not traditionally awarded to parks. It's traditionally awarded to kind of tourist destinations. So think, the Museum of Science or the Institute of Contemporary Art. We made the case that the North End parks, with the Freedom Trail and as the gateway, the front yard to the North End, that this was a tourist destination, and that was well received. And we also owe thanks. Representative Michaelwitz issued a letter of support for the grant application, and receiving $200,000 was a big chunk of money relative to the grants that they awarded this year. Not the very biggest grant, but on the upper end. So we are pleased. The Mass Cultural Council supported the carousel. The things that we're going to talk about tonight are not nearly as sexy or as fun as a carousel. And it is how fundraising is supposed to work, that you bring a donor in with a sexy project like that, and you keep them through a good relationship and to fund things that are a bit more nuts and bolts, like a lot of the stuff we're talking about. I think there's some fun stuff here, but that this is not the type of thing that's easy to fundraise for, so delighted to receive that. We continue to raise the funds necessary for the other $200,000 to do this, but we are sort of here tonight to announce it's happening. It's happening. We would appreciate your support. We will pass a hat at the end of the night. Not really. But you have to move forward with projects like this with the confidence that you will have the money to do it, and we are moving forward in that. So with that as an overview, I will stand back up at the end and go a little bit more into the budget and the components, but why don't we have Bob walk you through the kind of maintenance and hardscape elements before Stu walks you through what we're doing with horticulture and planting beds, including the boxwood, the much discussed boxwood beds, and then I'll pop back up. All right. This way.
So I want to talk about some of the hardscape things that have been included in this grant. That I'm personally looking very much forward to doing. A lot of these things have been things that I've had my eye on and wanted to fix, repair, upgrade, repaint, whatever, for a while now. So these bollard lights, there are a total of I think 15 of them on the 2 parcels that are in the North End. In my opinion, they were not a great choice for this location. They're, and I say that because they're very easily broken. We get, at night, maybe after a Bruins game or lots of times, people coming through who think it's a lot of fun to give these a good kick, and when they do that, they break at the base. We have to order a new part and put it back together. So this is something that we are going to be replacing with something more durable, something hopefully more attractive. And a sample light. We'll also take the opportunity to upgrade to an LED fixture. That's kind of something that we typically try to do whenever we're replacing lights, or in some cases simply retrofitting existing lights with an LED with guts for an LED light source. The Freedom Trail lights. These are LED, but I think what I've learned is that LED light sources have come a long way in the last 7 years since these were first installed. Most of them are not working at this point in time, so we will be replacing all of them. We've already replaced the parts of the system that are called drivers. We had to do that to determine exactly how many of the lights were indeed not working as to work. Of the 23 of these lights, there are very few of them that are working at this point. So hopefully by in a couple of months, I'm thinking when we get them in and have them installed, they'll all be restored and all be working. So. The railings that are all around the fountains and the two parcels in the north end, they're made of two different materials. Some are steel that are painted, and some are parts of them are bronze. What happens is when the wind blows, a lot of that fountain water kind of gets sprayed onto these surfaces, and they've developed a sort of a scale coating that at this point we need to have it removed, and then the surface is either repainted or, in the case of bronze, refurbished. And part of that process is we want to work with the vendor that will be doing that work for us and ask them, is there any kind of a coating that we can put on? Is it easier for us to clean, easier for us to maintain, so that they never get looking like that again? The pergolas in the two parcels, there's sort of two different things going on that we want to address. The picture on the right, that is an I-beam. Those I-beams come down in the planter that's along Cross Street. We have corrosion at the ground level. We had an electrician come and check and make sure that they were properly grounded, and that that was not the reason that this was happening. So we don't think that is why. We think it's simply sort of the moisture in the soil, and over time it has caused the paint to fail. So we'll have to dig around them down to a suitable depth, have them properly prepared and properly painted. The other posts that come down, that sort of land on the granite paving further closer to the fountains, can't really see it very well, but there's just been wear and tear on these, from snow removal operations to graffiti removal. The paint has kind of lost its luster. In some places it's been scraped off altogether. So we want to have, in both cases, these posts repainted. This is in the northern of the two parcels. This is just north of the Freedom Trail. We've had this water leak from the fountain across the pavement for some time now. This was actually, there was a problem with this originally when they were installing it, and we had a contractor, they had it when it was being installed, we had a contractor come in and inject a sealant into the masonry system. That has not held up over time. We spent, the mason on my staff and a couple of others on my staff, spent about 3 days this fall kind of taking it apart, looking at it, trying to determine what was going on. So there are several things. It's, unfortunately, when you get into something like this, you find that there's more going on than you thought. So off the back, that section drawing shows you kind of section through the trough. That is the trough. The water comes through that pipe, it fills that trough, it rises to the surface, and it spills over the large granite pavement on the left of the photo. That trough is cast-in-place concrete. It has joints every so often. The sealant in those joints has failed. The protective waterproofing coating on all of those three walls of the trough has also failed. So this is not a matter of just sealing between where the granite is more down to where the concrete. There are more problems. There's more of a deeper problem than that, which we can talk more about in these slides. The picture on the left, you'll see a joint, a vertical joint in the concrete. That sealant has failed. And what happens then is the water goes through, it gets to the veneer on the other side, and eventually will leak out. On the right, that's the trough, the pipe. Sort of see it in there. All the waterproofing in that trough is starting to fail, so we need to remove that pipe, we need to waterproof it properly, put the pipe back in, and it will solve this issue. And I want to talk about some park furniture changes that we're including with this project. The Gustafson benches in the picture on the left, those, a little history on those. Those were designed by one of the landscape architects that designed these parcels. So it was a custom bench, very expensive bench. Whenever you sort of get something that is a first of, you oftentimes have problems with it. The finish on them has not done well at all. These benches are solid steel. They get very hot in the summer. Some of you know. We don't think, we think there are better choices out there. So the bench on the right is the one that we selected for these areas. There are 21 benches in all. We we also are looking into the possibility of having about 8 of them be swinging benches or hanging benches from the pergola. And we have a structural engineer looking into whether or not the pergola can handle that capacity. We think it can. We're fairly optimistic that that will work, but until we hear back from them, we won't know for sure. So another picture or two about them. This is from the manufacturer of the benches that we're using in an application that we've used elsewhere. And, this is kind of a Photoshop look at what it might look like. So in this case, the other one is a swinging bench, and the other ones are fixed. So again, 21 total, 8 of them would be swinging. That's what we're looking at. And with that, I'll hand it over to Stu Schiller, Superintendent of Horticulture.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you. Tonight I have the pleasure of talking to you about some of the past things that we have accomplished in the last year in the North End Parks in the Pergola, and then what we're really excited to talk to you about is the improvements that are still coming, particularly in the area of the boxwood beds, but also again in the Pergola. And I'll take you through a few of the slides and talk about a few things, and then it'll be my distinct pleasure to hand over to my colleague, Dara, who did not make the agenda, unfortunately, but Dara Cole will come and just talk to you a little bit more about the nuts and bolts of the design for the boxwood beds. Dara's a member of the horticulture staff, and you've seen a lot of her great work up and down the Greenway corridor with all the containers that we have. She's responsible for the design and installation of those. She's had a very active role in designing light touch improvements up and down the Greenway. Big responsibility tasked with getting the parcel 22, the demo garden area down at Dewey Square, up to its current state now since Occupy Boston, where we have a very active garden with lots of features and stuff for people to enjoy. So Dara will join me in just a few minutes here. The pergola garden beds, we were very excited to begin some of our horticultural improvements, starting with the shade trees that were mentioned by John earlier. And then last spring on parcel 10, we were able to get into the pergola area after a process of working on design and trying to come up with an effective screening, increase the variety of plant material, achieve 4 seasons of interest and everything. We were able to introduce this new planting palette into the parcel 10 pergola, and we're very excited this spring to be able to replicate that on parcel 8 as well. And that will be, there was one continuous pergola bed on parcel 10. There's 2 beds on parcel 8 bisected by the Freedom Trail, and we're pleased that both of those beds will be part of this project. So you will see a repeat of the plant palette that was used on 10 will be in parcel 8 as well. Some of the things that we're trying to achieve with the design approach, again with retaining the shade trees, they do serve a great purpose. The maple trees that are in the bed already, introducing more height in shrubs in terms of diversity, getting that screening effect, and one of the signature plants that we used was the knockout rose, getting that in there too for a good pop of color and stuff. I apologize again for the small screen, but the image on the left, just trying to show that we don't, as you can see sort of through, and my angle right now it's not the best, but the point of the first photo on the left is to show before how we did not have a great variety of plant material. We did not have screening of street traffic. It was still sort of open, and photo on the left, we've introduced those new plants. We've got height, we've got textural difference and everything, and this is all part of Dara's work, being responsible in a collaborative effort with other members of the board staff and with some outside help and everything. But I think that was a big success on parcel 10, and pleased to show that on parcel 8 as well. I think the real sort of the big excitement, the big rollout for us for the horticulture staff this spring is to be involved with the boxwood gardens and seeing the improvement beginning in those. There will be a renovation this spring of the parcel 8 boxwood gardens, and then there'll be a continuation of trying to fund that work carrying over in the future, we hope to parcel 10 as well. This is going to be a very exciting project for us. It's going to involve, the image on the left is parcel 8. It's going to involve all of the boxwood beds. There'll be a renovation of all of those. And hope that that's going to be a big success. Some of the goals and things that we're trying to achieve with this project is the image in the upper left. By trying to create a healthy growing environment, we do have problems with a heavy amount of weed stock, particularly vetch. The image here is it's not growing through the benches. That's just for the benefit of everybody here, just kind of trying to show what the plant is. It's an invasive weed. It's got a very aggressive root system. It's very spreading. We seem to have a very healthy population of a bad and undesirable plant in the boxwood beds, and we'd like to remove that as part of the renovation. Image in the upper right, introducing plants with 4 seasons of interest. We all understand that. Increasing plant variety. The boxwood beds in their current state are very dense. They've got a lot of plant material in them. Much of the stuff from a textural and color looks very similar to each other. It just appears to be somewhat of just a mass of vegetation. And we hope to jazz that up considerably, including the entrances as you approach these from the north, from the south, from the east and the west. These heavy boxes that towering presence of taxus with trees that greet you. One dark plant kind of at eye level and even above in some cases doesn't seem to be what we think can be the best solution. We'd like to open these up, get more color, get more excitement, more welcoming entrance into the boxwood beds. And in doing this, I mentioned a collaborative effort. It did originate some time ago through this public process. And then we were fortunate enough to work with Lyndon Miller out of New York City, who's been responsible for countless renovations of really great public space and private space. Images of her work at the New York Botanical Garden, as well as the Conservatory Garden in Central Park. We were very pleased to be able to partner up with Lyndon and have her come and work and understand what we were trying to achieve and offer up some great suggestions that Dara and other members of our staff took and really built off of. And many of you may remember we had Lyndon in attendance at, I believe it was the second meeting probably, where we did some of the rollouts of our ideas, and she strongly endorsed our efforts and thinks we have a very sound plan and it's going to look beautiful. And with that, I think this is probably a good time for me maybe to just have Dara come up and tell you a little bit about what we're actually going to get into with this stuff.
For me?
Yeah.
So our basic approach is to create a more welcoming entrance to the park, but we want to keep the existing formal structure that the boxwood beds imply. And so that means we're going to both create and keep the buffers from the busy streets, but we're going to make it more accessible and welcoming by having a variety of plant material, and also by allowing a little more of a view access into the park. And to add quite a variety and to expand the plant palette so that it covers all 4 seasons, so that we'll have spring, summer, fall, and winter interest. For the slide, sorry. Okay, so this is a quick collage of the potential plant palette, and we have completed most of the design. So this covers all 4 seasons, and again, there'll be bulbs and flowering shrubs in the spring. There'll be a full selection of various perennials throughout the summer and into the fall, along with a very substantial shrub layer, which will give us both evergreen and conifer interest in the winter. These are some sketches that Hannah Whipple, who's on our staff, had done at a fairly early stage, so these may have been in the previous presentation as well. The section on the top is just to give people a sense of the scale that we're working in, so that we'll be adding a fair amount of plant material that will show above the boxwood layer. And right now, most of the plants do, the perennials come up, but there's no other structure or bones to the boxwood beds. And so the bottom sketch is an elevation, and we'll show you that we are adding quite a bit more bones and sort of beefiness to the boxwood. We'll be adding some additional trees. Again, a nice mix of shrubs that will include flowering, spring flowering shrubs, interesting foliage, and some actually summer flowering, and then also some that will provide fall color interest. We are putting in some very thin vertical elements, which will speak again to some of the formality that's implied by the boxwood beds, but it will be quite a lively, flexible planting within that structure. And this is just a sample of our design plan. So we have gone through about 4 iterations of the planting design. Hannah and I have worked on it quite a bit. We sort of landed on most of our plant palette by working with Linda Miller, and then we have also engaged the drafting and advice of a landscape architect who works with the contractor that we'll be working with. So that's sort of the state that we're at, and I'm very excited about what we're going to be able to add in to these beds. Another element which you can't really see here, but we are going to be opening the boxwood beds, having a section open from the boxwood hedge that will be facing the lawn. And so Hannah and I talked a lot about the front porch, front lawn concept that was originally intended in the North End parks. And we felt that when you're in we want people to feel that the boxwood plantings are accessible and something that they want to explore when they're sitting on the lawn. So they'll be able to see into the planting beds a little bit from the lawn area rather than having to peer over the boxwood hedges.
Can you just show where the boxwoods on that plan are? If you were sitting in the park, I'm just curious.
So,
If you're in the, sorry, we're in
Yeah.
the park
Just
here.
get a visual.
So this would be, the fountain would be back here.
Right.
And everything. So we're Dara's point here is opening up this side, what we're referring to as the lawn side and the
do you
east
want to
side.
just point to the little openings? There are only
Yeah.
3 of them,
Yeah.
one
Just
in each bed.
But sort
So
of,
I think a 10 or 12-foot section, just a little sort of invitation. Not enough, we hope, to invite people to
Yeah.
actually, we
Not too
certainly
inviting.
not trying to
Absolutely.
invite people
Not
to
too
walk into the beds.
I'm just
So,
curious.
and with that, I'm going to hand it back to
Yep.
Stu to talk a little bit about the contractor that we're in talks with.
yeah, I even need to get a little closer to this one to read, so I apologize again for the small screen. But we through everything went out to bid. I believe we had 6 contractors were given the opportunity to bid on the project based on their credentials, and we thought they would be worthy candidates to work with. We got 3 proposals back. They were all great. They had interesting elements to each one of them, but in the end, we did end up going with a local company, Bonadio and Sons, and they seemed to, one of the things that sort of was a committee, myself and Dara and Anthony Ruggiero, a horticulture foreman who many have met. Hannah, that Dara referenced, director of park operations, was involved in sort of understanding all the different proposals that came in. What I really liked about the Bonadio proposal was understanding, they seemed to very much understand the importance of this landscape to the North End parks, and recognizing that we would be doing, obviously this is not work that will take place in the wintertime. This needs to happen in warmer weather when the parks are being counted on as a recreational space for everybody to enjoy. And their approach was very light touch. They had a very precise approach to how they were going to handle the job. What we had asked for them in this image here, sorry I'm confusing the clicker with my pointer, but they have this is literally the perimeter of the boxwood beds, and their plan for the construction fence is to stay as close to that perimeter of the boxwood beds as possible, almost onto it. We had other proposals that came in that thought that it would be necessary to use maybe almost 50% of the lawn as a laydown area for their, for their equipment and the whole process, and we just didn't think that we could give up the valuable lawn space to this effort this time. So they had a great approach. It even involves the use of a conveyor belt that they're going to be bringing in. It's a tow-behind piece of equipment, but it'll be a conveyor belt that will be set up down through the main path of the boxwood beds. They plan to begin their work in the north end of the boxwood beds, and they will be setting up temporary bridging over the pathways, so from one bed to another they can go through with their equipment, and the conveyor belt will be there in the middle, and everything will be conveyor belted out to awaiting trucks here, and all taken away. A very clean, precise approach, and that really resonated with us. It was really important. Some of the things that just you may not be able to read from a distance here, they're just talking about our when we get to the mulching and composting phase of the project, we have the ability to blow that in. We're trying to be very cognizant of the fact that we have very healthy soils, absent of the fact that we have a weed problem. The soils themselves are extremely healthy, and we want to try to minimize our impact of disturbing the good soils that are already in place. So when we do the mulching and the composting, we don't have to add a lot of equipment into the beds. That can all be blown in from the street. Truck access is all going to be done properly with police detail. We're going to have safety cones, and all the pedestrian and public safety was stressed to them, and they seem to really get it and work well with us. The access point will be here from the southwest corner of the boxwood beds. There will be a little bump out with a gate enclosure here, just to allow for the gates to swing open and out. We don't think at any time, to any great detail, the Freedom Trail or any public pedestrian access will be really impeded, absent of going into the boxwood beds. Obviously, it'll be a work zone, so we'll have to restrict access there. But we'll be very happy that part of their proposal allowed for the Freedom Trail to remain open at all times. So this is it's a good company. It's got a good feel. They have, I think, some ties to the North End community themselves and everything. So we're really looking forward to working with them. I think it'll be a great partnership to get this project through the completion. A little bit about the schedule, how it all is going to come together. We do hope to begin the demo phase of the boxwood beds in early April. That's our goal, weather permitting. We're still not under a few feet of snow. We should be able to start. And there'll be a demolition of pretty much all of the existing material will go. The boxwood beds, the boxwoods themselves are not healthy plants. We'll be replacing those with new. So a lot of material is going to go. There will be some stuff salvaged. We're very happy to be able to keep going in that direction. It's very important to the horticulture staff that when possible we do salvage healthy plants, and we've had a great success rate of repurposing material elsewhere on the Greenway. So some of the smaller stuff, some iris and daylilies that Dara's identified, and I believe it was 3 of the Amelanchier trees we feel can all come out, and we'll find new homes in other locations on the Greenway. So that's all part of the demo. It's getting them down to a sort of a clean palette. There will be a period of time where the project will, and the boxwood beds will stop for a period of time. It's called the fallow period, and this is where the beds have all been stripped of their vegetation. Things that are going to be salvaged have been transplanted out. They will remain empty for a period of time, and the goal here is for us to assess: are we seeing the reemergence of the vetch, and if so, will we be continuing our control methods to try to eradicate that? While that's happening, and this was all planned and seemed seemed to make sense. It's great for the contractor. There really won't be much of a break in their actual work schedule. They'll transition from the demo phase in the boxwood beds over to the installation of the pergola beds during that period, and then in mid-May they should be starting back up and see through into June for the completion of the boxwood beds. While this is all going on in the boxwood beds and the pergola, Bob has just done a great job of detailing all the wonderful improvements they're going to be doing. That'll be happening up until mid-May. We're looking forward to possibly the swings in addition to the benches. I'm kind of excited to see if the swings are going to be a possibility, and we look forward to somewhere to second half of June of having a wonderful ribbon cutting. ceremony. So, that's the horticulture coming to the north end.
Before we even get back into the numbers, thanks. A couple of things. First, just on that fallow period, I mean, we are very conscious of the fact that construction sites that sit empty for a month with no work going on frustrate people. Now, this is very deliberate, right? This is not going to be one of those situations where where's the contractor? We expect him out there. This is deliberate, but that we need to make sure that you all know and you all help us spread the word as to why that is. We intend to use the fence as well as a way to, have temporary signage up there that helps explain why you're not seeing anything happening, because the vetch seeds are germinating, or hopefully not germinating because there are none there. But it's deliberate and intentional, and people need to understand that. I'll say overall, before I even get into the numbers, one of the things that I really like about this project is that in some ways it's nuts and bolts stuff, right? You got leaky fountains and benches that haven't really held up and lights that have gone out, and you've got a invasive weed, and you've got boxwoods that aren't as healthy or as popular in the community. I mean, in some ways that's kind of boring stuff. You gotta fix it. But what I like about it is that, this team has shown the creativity to think about not just how to kind of replace in kind or fix it, but yeah, instead of just let's refinish the benches or let's put another bench in, let's give the front porch of the north end porch swings, and let's not just try and deal with the invasive weed, but let's make the gardens more welcoming. And that if the original design for these parks, they were the North End parks, and they were very oriented to the North End, very appropriately. But that there are significant changes that are going on the west side of the parks now, with Boston Public Market and the Haymarket Hotel development and the Government Center Garage development. Regardless of how you feel about those things, there are changes that are coming on the west side, and the parks need to respond to the west side in a different way now than they did when the design for them was done. And so I like it that this project, which in some ways is very infrastructural, is also forward-looking and making improvements to the park. So let's talk about what that means in number terms. By the way, it is a $400,000 project. This 20 is supposed to be lined up there. There's nothing different about that 20 than any of the other numbers. Here are the components, and these total to $400,000. The garden beds are $20,000. That's from a separate source of money, so that's not part of the 400. There are other elements that we talked about a year ago that aren't included here. There are some skateboard deterrents. We actually, correct me on this, Bob, we've already done parcel 8, but we've not done parcel 10.
No
skate deterrents on the west
no
side.
correction needed.
Thank you. And so half of the skate deterrents have been done already. What we generally find with the skate deterrents, this is along the sidewalk edge there, along that wall. What we generally find with skate deterrents is we put them in one place and that sends skateboarders somewhere else, and then we have to put in skateboard deterrents there. So far, somewhere there's wood. They haven't. So far, they have not hit the parcel 10 wall in a significant way. They will. But as we try and prioritize where to spend a limited budget here, that's one that, well, we'll address it when we need to, and hopefully we will never need to. Sidewalk slabs, we also think that we will probably be able to address those kind of within budget at some point, and they aren't, there's a significant issue there at this point. So those are two that were relatively easy to kind of deprioritize. It may be that the costs up here, some of which still remain estimates. I mean, this $175,000, that's a quote from the contractor, basically. It's 173 and change is the number. Some of these may come down, some of them may go up. which might allow us to deal with the sidewalk slabs or other things that have to come up. Hopefully there's nothing up here that's going to fall down. We believe that almost everything up here. This 175 is basically a real number. The 95 is a real number. We know what the benches cost. There's a number held for engineering here. That number is more likely to come down than go up. So we feel pretty good that we should be able to do all of these things. It's possible some of these will be able to move up. The one that clearly is a big enough ticket number is dealing with the parcel 10 Boxwood Gardens. And so that will wait. I think we'll also learn things from doing one full parcel and the construction associated with that that may inform what we do with the Boxwood Gardens on parcel 10. So I think that even apart from the financial kind of constraints on this, I think that there's merit to doing one big project there and then another. So that walks through the budget. And the next, from here, we would transition to Steve talking about the new lease parcels. And the sort of intent is to take questions at the end, but also happy to, if anybody has anything pressing now or any questions yeah.
Just a quick one. The projected expense for parcel 10 was half of parcel 8. Is the acreage half the size of parcel 8's acreage?
So the 175 here is very comparable to the 200 here. All of the rest of these things here, the bench replacement, the freedom trail lights, those are not restricted to the parcel except where we will do the benches on both 8 and 10.
I see.
We will do the freedom trail lights on 8 only where they exist. The pergola repairs will be 8 and 10, the railing repairs will be 8 and 10, the bollard lightings will be 8 and 10. The fountain leak fix is parcel 8. And my apologies for those in the room that don't speak the inside baseball language of parcel numbers. We all fall into the habit. Sorry. 8 is the northernmost one. 10 is the southernmost one of the two. Parcel 8 is where the Freedom Trail runs through, so we probably should be calling them north and south. But north end and south end is awkward in its own way. So, yeah.
What kind of disruption is going to be incurred by the trucks for traffic? Concerns? Are there going to be long-term closures of anything?
No.
Do you want to? Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, the trucks. What's great about this conveyor system and sort of the remediation of the soils that are out there, we're going to be adding compost to that soil. Initially, we were stripping a lot of soil out, and trucking was a major issue. The Bonadio proposal is to really reuse a lot of the soil that's there, supplement it with compost material, test it, get it up to our spec, and it minimizes that. Now, the conveyor also minimizes, a truck just moves in, parks there, is filled.
So it parks on the Greenway, though?
It parks, on that sketch that was sort of blue, that little box on the end.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so that's really the only place a truck will back into. And Stu or Dara, I mean, he got that down to how many? It wasn't like over 3 days or something, and something less than 12 truckloads. So it's very minimal compared to, we were looking at, 30 truckloads of material. They were stripping a lot of material out. And after consulting with some other soil experts and testing it ourselves and looking at compost, we think we can supplement it on site.
Great.
Yeah, I have to, the conveyor was a surprise to all of us, that became a cost-effective means of doing this.
So there aren't, happy to take more questions on this later or now, but the release parcels. Steve will go through this. Let me just give a little bit of backstory for those that haven't been following it that closely. So we're a nonprofit, 501c3. We exist. We were set up via legislation to be the steward of the parks. We're set up as initially to fundraise for the parks. When we met certain goals for that, we were then enabled by 2008 legislation to be the stewards of the park. signed a lease with the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, MassDOT, and took operation of the park in February of 2009, so 6 years ago, almost exactly. It is MassDOT with whom we have a lease because it is their tunnel, the Interstate Highway Tunnel, underneath the park. So it's a big roof garden park. It is their land. The initial lease with MassDOT was a 5-year lease. The legislation allows for 55-year leases in increments. So the first increment was a 5-year lease. When that lease expired, about a year-ish ago now, it was extended to a series of almost like month-to-month extensions, as we had conversations with MassDOT about a series of things. We signed first a term sheet and have finalized a new lease with MassDOT that is, it's a 2-year lease, and we can talk about and get into why a 2-year lease. We actually had a little bit of conversation about this at some North End meetings previously. We can go into that if there are any questions, but within that 2-year lease, MassDOT continues funding for the Conservancy. They provide about 40% of our annual operating budget. Our annual operating budget is about $5 million a year. They provide about $2 million a year. The other $3 million is brought to bear from philanthropy. Thank you, Jody. Thank you, Kelly. From earned income. Thank you, Carousel. Thank you, food trucks. And from a draw from an endowment from the money that was raised early on. So that's the kind of overview of the budget and the role MassDOT plays in it. They are continuing that funding, and in fact, the relationship has been successful enough that they are giving us responsibility for some additional land that they control on their acres. So we have maintained about 15.5 acres for the first 6-ish years. This new lease adds another about 1.25 acres. So call it now about 17 acres that the Conservancy will maintain. MassDOT is also providing, in addition to sort of continuing their funding, they're providing a small supplement on top of that for the Conservancy taking on some additional responsibility. And as a one-time upfront thing, they're providing a slug of money to make fixes. Basically, 6 years ago, we took some areas of land and have been trying to make them better. And they have not paid much attention to the others, and so they've diverged. Things are broken and need fixing, which is a lot of what Steve will talk about. I think it will take some time to bring these back, but someone will be paying attention to them. And this is not really to criticize MassDOT. As we know, they have a lot of roads, bridges, tunnels, trains, subways that need their full attention. That is why they set up the Conservancy originally, so that we could be focused on this. I don't have a very good explanation for why these parcels were not originally in the lease, and there are some other parcels that we could talk about that MassDOT owns in the area, and I don't have a good explanation for why they weren't added now. I think it's distinctly possible that in 2 years, or 7 years, or 12 years, they would add some additional things to the lease. But for now, why don't I hand it to Steve to talk about what they did include along the length of the Greenway and specifically the north.
Thanks. Everybody else gets to talk about nice, cool stuff, and I'm going to show you some rather depressing parcels. The lease has been signed by us, but it is being reviewed by Federal Highway at this point, so we haven't officially taken these on yet. So I'm going to go old school on you with a pointer. So these parcels in red are the new parcels that we're taking. And I'm going to really only focus on the parcels here in the north end. Right now, this is the north end park.
Eight.
You like that, Jessica? I'm actually not using numbers.
Parcel 8.
Parcel 8, thank you very much. Quiz time, who knows what this parcel is?
6.
No, sorry, parcel 5.
Oh, that's fine, yeah.
Parcel 6 here. So right now, this is the northern end of what we take care of. Parcel 2 is a parcel, I'll show a picture of it in a minute, but that will become our northernmost piece. These other parcels are really, this is the portal to the Sumner, this is Callahan, this is the 128 North Street building, Federal Admin. So we'll be taking on that lawn in front and a couple of plant beds along the side of the building. So in thinking about how do we take these parcels and make them Greenway-like, You know, we're an organic horticultural group. One thing that we don't want to do is spend a lot of money on plant material and have it die or have it fail. So the first thing we want to do, did I hit a button?
Back to the stick.
Yeah, that's the stick. The first thing we want to do is get the irrigation up and running, because any plant material that we put out there is going to fail unless we have irrigation. So the first thing to do there is we want to upgrade the systems to what the rest of the Greenway is going to have. We want to test the soil, supplement the soil to the point where we feel it will support our plant materials. And then we are inheriting a lot of trees that have never been pruned or currently dead. One of the problems with the irrigation system is, well, you can see how complicated it is. So if this is parcel 5 here, this is the northern end of 6, and we own this side of parcel 6. The stuff in blue is actually what the Greenway now controls and takes care of. We're being asked to take on parcel 2. All the stuff you see in yellow is part of a city system. And they actually, the controller here is a city controller. So as we take this on, first of all, we want to replace the controller. Then we're going to turn this on and find probably a lot of leaks in the system that has not been really maintained in 8 years. So our first focus this first year, I believe, is going to be almost entirely on irrigation. And then it will be on the soil quality. This is parcel 2 currently. As you can see, it's not well maintained. Right now there's a lot of parking on it. Compacted soil. Again, get the irrigation back on, and we'll make some soil improvements here, and we'll see if we can get a lawn back on it. Or we'll have another meeting like this and get ideas for what to do there. The current lawn in front of 128 North Street is actually a decent lawn. We'll probably do some programming here. We'll probably do some artwork here. We're open to other ideas to do there. This is the Callahan portal. Again, this is a small portal, hasn't had much irrigation, it's green. We'll probably, Dara and Stu will probably think of other things to do here to improve the quality of it. But bear with us in this first year. I think a lot of it's going to be a learning exercise of what we can do to improve these, taking a lot of input from people on how they would like to see it improved, and then move forward probably in the next couple of years to take all of the parcels you saw in the first plan and bring them up to sort of our standard. And I think that's it. Yes. Charlie McCabe, our Director of Programs.
Thanks. So last but not least, maybe not. Want to give you a quick update on programming. So Public Programs is responsible for programs and events. We do about 300 a year on the Greenway, Greenway-wide. We're also responsible for the earned revenue side of things, such as talked about, namely the carousel, as well as the food vending program. The North End is actually a fun set of park parcels to program, because it gets a lot of what we call passive use, people enjoying the sun when it's above 45 degrees and there's no snow. We've done a series of concerts. We've done a lot of exercise classes. One of the things that we'll have to do in the current year, given the construction in the first half of the summer on the North End parcel, or parcel 8, will be to kind of ratchet that back and move some things over to parcel 10. The other thing we work on that's nearby that I wanted to mention is we work with a photography festival that comes to the North End actually every May, called the Flash Forward Festival. And this will be the 3rd year that we've actually worked with them to put out what they call The Fence, which is about 340 feet of photographs. It's a jury competition. It's actually nationwide that people can submit to. And then a series of shipping containers that have galleries of photos basically all during the month of May. The other thing we've been able to do on the cross street side of the fence last year and again this year, thanks to help from MassDOT, is actually put together a series of photographs from New England artists, and we actually have put on a call for especially North End Boston. It's a free competition. It's actually, if you go to flashforwardfestival.com, you can actually get all the information about it. I think the competition closes right at the end of March, so they are looking for it. So we'll have, again, about 340 feet of photographs on the circle side on the Surface Street, and then about 300 feet on the Cross Street side. And it's a wonderful event. They have a series of exhibitions and talks and tours in the first kind of weekend of May. So just close by. So until we come back and hear from MassDOT with their plan for parcel 12 is one of the grant parcels in conjunction with the VRA. This is what we're trying to do some programming on parcel 12. Just to kind of give you an idea of what we've done in the last couple of years, we primarily focused on small concerts, some sampling, one food cart, and then a series of free fitness classes. All the fitness classes that we have are actually donated by instructors. Yoga is probably the biggest. I think we had like 45 yoga classes from May through October of last year in the North End. We had some boot camps. Again, we try to strike a balance between what's going on in the North End, how many people are using the park, and how to make sure that we don't wear the lawn too unevenly. So Stu comes and talks to me about that. But we'll continue to do that. We're also always open to community events. I think we've mentioned a ribbon cutting when we're done with the work on both parcels in probably mid-June. I've talked to Sherry Snow at NEMPAC as an example for maybe providing the entertainment for that, which would be a great opportunity. There are other things, but we're happy to entertain just with any of the other, with any of the other parks along the Greenway, any kind of small community program. We're happy to help facilitate that. So that's something we can always do. And just to kind of give you an idea of where we are in terms of our usage in the park, given the park is 1.5 miles long, almost 17 acres since we signed the lease, and rather porous, we can't necessarily count all the people that cross the park every day. But what we can count are kind of 4 measures that give us an indication of how many people are using the park. And those are from the bottom up, event attendants, carousel riders, people that log on to our free Wi-Fi system, and people that visit food trucks. And as you can see, we've topped 1 million in 2014. So we've seen fairly substantial growth over the years. I keep waiting for this to kind of flatten out. It hasn't yet, which is great. But we try to balance it in all areas of the Greenway. So just kind of want to make sure that you know that we try to do things that are that people ask for. If you have suggestions, we welcome them during the Q&A and else at other times. And we look forward to spring coming back someday. With that, I can turn to Justin for questions.
Thanks. Last night we did another public meeting. We talked about this incredible piece of public culture that we're bringing to the Greenway. Local artist Janet Eckelman, who's exhibited around the world, but never locally. This is her first Boston commission. A 250-foot wide by 125-foot wide aerial sculpture that will be suspended from buildings along the Greenway. Think of it as kind of in front of the Intercontinental Hotel. We're all a little bit drinking from a fire hose because this North End Improvement Project, boy, that'd be the biggest thing we've done, in a couple of years. Except we're also doing this public art project, and we're taking on these new lease parcels. So there's a lot going on the Greenway this spring. We hope you will come out and enjoy watching the construction happen and the plants get installed, and then enjoy seeing the new plants as they take shape, and waiting somewhat more patiently as the lease parcels come back. And definitely May 11th we are targeting for the grand opening for this sculpture. So that gives you a sense of what we're working on in the North End and along the Greenway and with public art. Happy to take any questions. All of us are. Thank you. And let me
Yes, we should also say, thanks to Phil, you can actually get some information on all of these projects, the papers that are scattered around tonight. So, thank you.
Needless to say, if I say anything, you know where I'm coming from. Francine Gannon, Commercial Street. We talk about north end parcels. I just want to make sure everyone in this room understands. We're talking about park parcels and what the Greenway has this added lease. We're very interested in north end parcels include 8, 10, 12, and 13. Those are all north end parcels. Unfortunately, they haven't been picked up. 12 has been picked up on your added lease agreement, and we understand why, because that's being debated. We hopefully with parcel 12, instead of being a development to parcel, which we've opposed all along, hopefully will now be dedicated as, in fact, I know it's on the Mass Dot's jurisdiction, not yours, and hopefully becomes a parkland parcel, parcel 12. But I do want to say with the flash photos, because all of us from that section of the north end, commercial, Fulton Street, whatever, we've expressed, myself, Dan Nuzzo, Jason, and being part of the first advisory council back 7 years ago when the Greenway was in fact established. We've expressed concerns because that section of parcel 12, which the north end has that chain link fence as you come on, you know, we never got a decorative fence. We were hoping we would get more of a decorative fence there. That's never happened, and that's been proposed a number of times. And I want to say, as far as to the Greenway, to thank you with the flash photo artwork that has in fact covered a portion of that fence. But it's really filthy all the time, some of us as neighbors, and also thank you to Work Inc. Because sometimes during the summer, your people extend over and take some of the garbage that accumulates. I'm just saying, as a resident of the North End, is there any way, with all this money being spent on 8, 10, and the other added parcels, to keep an eye on that section of 12? Sure. I mean, because the artwork now is falling, it's deteriorating, half of it is down from the awful weather. But if there's anything, because we talked at one time, I seen Nat Swain in the room. He gave a proposal, I know, to the Greenway in the hopes of putting up some of his, you know, you made a submission. It wasn't accepted, and maybe they had a, but something has to be done along, I'm talking about from where the Armenian Heritage Park and to actually Knott Street. As you know, that whole section, you know, people drive along here all the time, and it's filthy, as I say. And we in the North End got the chain link fence as opposed to the decorative fencing that's overlooking the exits to the expressway. They're much more decorative. Something needs to be done. I just want you to put that in everyone's thought. It shouldn't be forgotten that it's just 8 and 10. It's 8, 10, 12, and 13 are in fact North End parcels. And I thank the Greenway for putting up those photos that at least covers that ugly looking chain link fence.
Sure.
And thank Work Inc. for the nice weather, because it's very difficult to clean that area because there's no sidewalk on the side of the fence. But I just want to make sure everybody understands that and keeps that in the back of their mind. Something needs to be done there, more on a permanent basis, but I understand the economics. But again, I'm glad to hear that something's going to be done with the flash, you know, the flash forward group, but something more than that needs to be done, whether it be some sort of artwork to cover the fence, or whether it be maybe even putting ivy to cover the fence as it grows, because God knows, I'm sure once Mass Dot makes their determination, we'll all see a beautiful park there at one point in time down the road. That's
so,
my wish.
Absolutely. I mean, we agree. For those, I think Francine's doing a good overview, but Parcel 12 was going to be the Boston Museum in one version of things, and Parcel 6, which is right across from the Haymarket Tea Station, was going to be the Y. Those nonprofits were given a big hill to climb to try to raise the money in the recession for to build over the ramps in downtown Boston. Too costly, wrong economy to raise the money. They, like the Arts and Culture Center further down on Parcel 18, each threw in the towel one by one. Those parcels are actually in our lease. We do care for them, but Parcel 12 most prominently here, there isn't irrigation. And as Francine talks about the eastern side of that, the cross street side of it, it's true, there is no, there's sort of no room to address that. And so we do periodically, with MassDOT's help, get a lane closure so that we can go over and pick up trash. But it is very much not at the condition that we would want to see it, or that the North End deserves to have, without a doubt. And things like Flash Forward Festival, and the Connex boxes, and the fence treatment are, you know, kind of a Band-Aid, right? Right now, for all of you, I mean, kind of, what can we all do about this? Because it's been that way for a long time. There is a big, big obligation to cover those ramp parcels. What that means is not really determined, because they were going to be covered by buildings. And in the absence of buildings, what does it mean to cover them? It's no one ever specified. MassDOT and the BRA are currently, right now, running a public process to determine that. And actually, Aaron and Anthony helped spur them along. There's actually legislation passed that set a deadline for addressing Parcel 12. One of the challenges of this is that there isn't funding behind it, but there isn't an idea yet, and so we've got a little bit of a chicken and egg thing. The public process right now, the MassDOT and the BRA have been running this. The conclusion from a series of public meetings is that all three of those ramp parcels should not be buildings. They should be open space, and that they should be covered with, think of it as, you know, kind of coverings that would be then park space. Very preliminarily, I mean, we are delighted that something is finally happening to determine this, and we're delighted that the preliminary conclusion is that they should all be open space. The devil's in the details on that. You know, they could be covered and they could get an asphalt ramp over them and they'd be covered, but they wouldn't be attractive or appealing. And if you're going to spend all the money on the studies and all the money on the engineering and all the money on the construction to put that up, it's pretty short dollars to make it a nice park. And that, we actually just issued a comment letter that says just that. It says, thank you, we're delighted this is moving forward, and we hope that the next phase, where the actual design details are discussed, that they are not just sort of open space parking lots, but that they are open space, truly great green space. And the comment period is officially closed, but Lauren Shurtleff, who's the project manager on the BRA side, and John Romano have said that they're happy to still take a letter. Because it's closed, if you're going to weigh in on this, I'd encourage you to do it this week. And I'd encourage you to speak as forcefully as Francine has done on behalf of improving them and doing it soon and putting money behind it and making them not just generic open space, but really great open space. Victor?
A statement and a question? The statement is, thank you. And thanks for keeping the community in the loop. And thanks for coming to the community to do it and not asking us to go to the Wang building or whatever it's called now, next to South Station. What a refreshing, how can I say this diplomatically, a refreshing change from the earlier days of the Greenway, which I remember. I have a historical memory. So thanks. The question is with regard
and thanks for giving thanks. That's also, if we look back, that hasn't always been the dialogue. So
that's right. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah. The question has to do with the corrosion at the base of the posts in the pergola. Just curious, are they steel or aluminum?
They're steel.
They're steel.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to repaint. Are you going to repaint the entire pergola?
Well, not the entire pergola. We don't think the entire pergola needs it, but certainly the posts, whether the posts that come down or land in the plant beds or the posts that come down and land on the granite. I think in both cases, there's enough scratches, scrapes, corrosion, fading from removing graffiti and all that sort of stuff. So we want to take it up to a point where it's obviously new paint is going to look slightly different than the paint that's been there for a while. So we want to match the color as well as we can, but also if we can make that break point a place where it goes from vertical to horizontal, it'll be probably impossible to see the difference. So.
When the time comes to repaint the entire pergola, could I ask you to come to the community and get into a conversation about colors? The reason is, speaking of historical memory, I remember the meetings here, how long ago, 15 years ago? And I thought that the coloring was rather forbidding. It's kind of dark and not inviting. So when that point comes in time, let's have a conversation.
Okay.
I think I will say, realistically, given that Bob is talking about painting all the way up to then where it comes out, and that color is also, matches the railing color and the bollards color and other things. I think we should come back. It seems like it would make it a substantially bigger project if we were contemplating a full color change. And unless the community desire is a two-toned pergola, but we, as we get further into it, we can have some of those conversations.
No, I don't think two tones is what I'm suggesting. But I don't think it needs to match bronze, which I guess it was probably chosen to do. I think it could be different, like the pergola on the park.
Victor wants the Italian flag.
We'll have the conversation later.
Next question. Nate.
I wanted to thank you for doing all this work in North End Parks. I'm really excited about them actually going into a new phase of beauty. And I also wanted to put it out there that for years I've been thinking about putting some kind of shade structure covering over the top of the pergola in sections, and I've been thinking about it, and it's a big project. That's in like the $30,000 range if it were to be done. But I am moving forward with it, and I am planning on presenting an idea, a whole proposal to the Greenway once I finish that proposal. In the near future, you'll be hearing from me to propose this, because the pergola, it was one of these things when it was proposed, it was kind of forced on us. 7 years ago, they were saying, "Oh, we're going to have climbing roses." But then the climbing roses turned to clematis, and now we don't have any clematis at all. So it's sort of degraded into this. It looks. I've been told it looks unfinished. It almost looks like a Butler building frame or something. It's
skeletal. Looks like.
Yeah, it's like an unfinished Butler building or something. It's So I've always envisioned some sort of colorful covering in sections over the top of it. I thought when you look up at it, it'd be great for it to go from like a night moonlit, cloudy sky into a sunset sky, into a daytime, and then going all the way across to the other side where it goes from dark to light to dark again. And then on both ends, it could even be like twinkly lights going through the coverings to at nighttime. It could look like starlit twinkly stars or something, like in a blue or like a bluish white kind of. So just to add a lot more interest to this steel structure, that really, it is an architectural piece. I understand that, but it's still. It's sort of meant, I guess it's meant to hold plants, but it doesn't do that, so it really, it's not serving its full purpose, I think. And I know there's been arguments that it wouldn't provide shade most of the day, but I know in the middle of the summer, midday, when the sun's coming straight down, it's any sort of covering would help, especially, so it's just, I just wanted to throw that out there that I wanted to, I am planning on.
Thank you, Nate. You've been a long-time champion of a bunch of the things that are, ready to come to fruition here. So thank you for advocating for all those things, and thank you for continuing to put sort of new ideas out there. I think you're right. That would be a big project.
Yes.
and one that, we have a process for proposals of art and so on, and we can take that through that process, and that would, certainly for something of this kind of scope, like giving a roof to the pergola, there would not need to be a lot of community dialogue, a lot of engineering consideration, a lot of aesthetic consideration. We have a curatorial committee for public art, but thank you for continuing to push these things forward. We spent, for those that weren't here a year-ish ago, we spent a bunch of time talking about the pergola and anticipating that it might come up again. Maybe we've gone into hibernation.
While Jesse's doing that too, I mean, when I first was asked, I guess, to an extent, it was on the Greenway, that was one of the first things I said. I was like, I don't understand why this, it looks incomplete, and it looks like it should have been where, it had ivy or something. And I think a lot of it was the steel gets too hot, it doesn't support that type of plant, which is great, but that's always been on my mind too. So I think, and we brought it up in meetings, and it's just identifying what would work best. And I think that so that we don't come to this again where, in 7 years later when we're looking at it going, why did they do that? That it's kind of like, we're more cognizant of, let's make sure that this is done correctly and like once.
But I think Greenway was designed without very much involvement from the Conservancy at all, and was constructed without very much involvement from the Conservancy at all. It is our understanding, I mean, Steve actually worked on some of the construction, but it is our understanding that actually, despite a common impression that the pergola was to grow vines, that the design and as it was constructed, it is not really possible. It's a metal structure, it's one that is much taller than comparables around here that do grow vines, that are also wood. That's Christopher Columbus Park and Post Office Square, Leventhal. It was not designed to support vine growth atop it. I think that does pose the question of what was it designed then for? And it is a beautiful architectural element that frames the Custom House Tower in a very nice way, but it does then pose the question, for what then? Now, one of the things, we will give it a little purpose by hanging porch swings from it, but I think there is an ongoing conversation. If it can't grow vines and so on, what is it for? And so, happy to have more discussion around that here. Also, I think, look forward to seeing your proposal.
You're right. You're 100% correct, because that's not what it has, what it actually been built to be. But he can probably attest to the fact, Victor Branya, the historian over here, when all of that was proposed, that pergola was supposed to be made in wood, if you recall. They talked about doing it in teak wood to keep someone, even from some organization, Italian organization, had come in and talked about the wood. I'm going back. So it's not your, I feel badly, what actually ended up there, because I always recall, we always talked going way before 2009, going back to 2000, when we first sat, with meetings or whatever, of how to cover it. And it really was a difficult challenge to cover the pergola as it sits now. And either, I'd say, and this is crazy to say, either you get rid of it or you repair it, whatever the cost factor is. Because, like someone says, it looks like an unfinished piece of steel hanging there waiting for something to be done. I don't know what the cost factor is for you to do the necessary repairs, as you indicated here, but I'm talking about overall, to maintain it, the steel structure, painting it, and filling up the holes that are there, and reestablishing its footage in the ground. But maybe it might be down the road, I mean, it's now under the jurisdiction, of course it costs money, maybe to replace it entirely at some point down the road, if you can't do much with it. But I want to thank you, because I mean, we've talked about, because of the shading, and Judge and Murray and whatever going back, that's why the additional umbrellas were put in and the like, was to accommodate and give more shade to people who might be sitting in that area. And I know, I mean, and not to go back and touch again about the shading, the shading, the shading. That's been talked about, as he said, and it's not the Conservancy's fault. It's the design and the nature and the structure of the pergola. But, I mean, I just want to thank you, I mean, and always keep some shade there. We need those umbrellas, and I hope things go well with the swings, the swing benches, but I have a concern about them when they come out of the Boston Garden and head to the garage. I mean, I think it's a nice idea, though.
This is the perfect segue to Steve.
The 300-pound drunken sailor motif? No, just a little bit on the design, if you go back to that, because I worked with Fred Galoris back in the day, and one thing about the design, and I was going to talk a little bit about that when I showed the complicated irrigation system. At the time, there wasn't an operator identified, right? And nobody really knew what the Greenway would be, or if it was called a Greenway. And so some of the parcels coming to us now, I mean, could have been given to us right from the beginning and designed as parkland, right? So I think, you know, if you look at parcel 12 and coming across, the original design there had a bridge that lands in parcel 10. You know, so there were all sorts of assumptions made during the design phase, and the parks, as a civil engineer who worked on the real big stuff, the tunnels and the bridges and the viaducts initially, I moved over, because I have an architecture background, I moved over into the design side of the parks. But the parks were a late entry. This was a federal highway, interstate highway project. The icing on the cake and sort of the cleanup at the end was to put a park on top. So a lot of the things you see in the park are a victim of the tunnel design underneath. We had to move an egress head house in the Wharf District. I think a lot of people here might remember that. It was a very expensive move, but just to angle it so that it actually worked within the park along the promenade was a $1 million change. So that irrigation system was just a complete system trying to get that area covered. When you look at it now, when you say, okay, well, the jurisdiction here is the Greenway, the jurisdiction, oh, this is the city, and this is still state property, it gets very complicated, and that's really because there wasn't an operator assigned then. I have a billion lessons learned, right, as working on the project, now having to manage what the byproduct was. So if I could go back and say, well, really you need to design the systems to fit the way the systems work now and the way the Greenway is configured, it'd be very different. So it's very hard to compare it now, and I do think a lot of our hardscapes are hardscapes because there's no depth with the tunnel below us. The pergola you're talking about, though, is millions of dollars worth of redesign. So if you're going to take the pergola out and do something different, face it the other way, which is really the way the shade, if it was to provide shade along that section, then it really should have been faced the other way. So to make those kinds of changes is a major step. I think at a certain point, all of these systems, some of our fountains, eventually are going to be a replacement. And that, I think, is when you get into the discussion of a redesign. What kind of a different fountain do you want? Because it will be taking that fountain out and putting another one in. So, sorry.
Thank you. Yes.
I love the idea of the swings as the front porch concept. I don't know if there's been discussion about the possibility of some danger with kids with them going back and forth, and I wondered if anybody's thought of the idea of possibly a glider as opposed to a swing.
So they really are gliders.
Oh.
Yeah. Porch swing sounds better, though, doesn't it? Yeah. These are on a governor. The staff here will joke. I have a criteria for all of our artwork or anything we do, and it's the 300-pound drunken sailor criteria. And whatever that person will do, they will do, and it works usually. So if you can imagine if 4 drunken sailors swing on this, where's it going to go? Ask the manufacturer. These have a governor that will only let them go back to the face, a foot off the face of our shrubs. And I was worried about people walking by and the swings coming out. They really only have a swing radius of a couple of feet at the ground surface. They can't go further than that. what you can't, it's unfortunate that the sign is small and the room is bright, but the items that are coming down to the bench are a solid rod, and they won't allow it to go beyond a certain point.
But there is an eject button, so if they get unruly, right the manual hall. Porch.
Well, I want to thank you as well for reiterating what everyone else said. It's great to see the level of interaction we're having, and you guys have put a lot of thought. It's also nice to get $400,000 worth in these parks. I have two questions actually. The first is every time we've had a meeting like this, every time we have lengthy discussion about how terrible the pergola is. It's all the time. And it's always the same discussion, pretty much. I mean, it's like we've had the same, discussions and, heard about covering and all that, years back. I would like to suggest, I mean, there are a lot of interesting ideas. I mean, I personally am an advocate of illuminating it. I think if it's illuminated, it would be beautiful. Considering that I have, for Christopher Columbus Park, we have a container ship coming in with about 3 miles of lights to put on the Christopher Columbus Park trellis, LED lighting. I would love to see a concept of what that would look like in lighting, but that's just my idea. I don't know if it's practical. One of the things that I would like to suggest is that there are some facts about the pergola that I think we need to get down on paper and really all understand. How hot does it get in the summertime? How cold does it get in the wintertime? How much load can it bear? How much how much wind speed is there at the top? Can you put a covering on it without the wind shearing it off? Measurements, just fundamentals. In particular, I mean, I'm interested in the temperature because LED light strips will last up to about 80 degrees centigrade, but maybe not higher than that. I think there's a chance that thing might hit 80 degrees, but I don't know. I'd love to know, and I think to save Nate time and allow him to hone his proposal, and also I think it would be great if we could have a little study group, a working group that could be formed. Nura would be happy to do its part in parks and open spaces. I can watch Robin look at me and say, "What are you volunteering to do?" But we would love to help work with whoever would like to just have a little bit of an examination group to get some basic facts on the pergola to see what we can even do. Because if it turns out we can't do anything, it's 100 degrees, in the summertime, and it goes down to -50, and nothing can adhere to it, and wind speeds are such that anything would be blown off it. At least we'll know, and we won't continue to have the same conversation every year about the things that we can do about the pergola. So that's one suggestion, and maybe a question as to how we do that. The second thing I wanted to say is I thought it was really exciting to hear about the art project that you're doing down. It's going to be located, the installation, that aerial installation is going to be outside the Millennium Hotel, and it's beautiful.
Intercontinental.
Intercontinental, I'm sorry, Intercontinental, excuse me, thank you. It's going to be beautiful. But I was thinking, as we were going through the $400,000 that's spent here, you could put it all into a category of busted stuff that needs to be fixed. And I'm just wondering, and obviously the new art installations are more exciting, but they go away in a year, so it's almost better to fix busted stuff. But how bad are parcels 8 and 10 in terms of the ratio of busted stuff that needs to be fixed versus new stuff in the budget compared to the other parcels? Because it just seems to me that a lot of stuff is breaking in those two parcels. I mean, and I know that you guys didn't design it, so I don't mean it as a diss of any sort. But it just seems like that's all we do with those parcels is fix busted stuff.
I think let's see. Let's address the second one first. It's top of mind for me. I think the North End parks were done at a high level of finish. I mean, there's a lot in them. I mean, if you look relative to Chinatown Park, there are 2 fountains here and railings and a pergola, which you may or may not like, and a tremendous amount of granite and specialty lighting. And so it is, with this sort of density of systems, I think you could say a similar thing about the Wharf District Parks, although it is actually spread out a little bit more. I mean, there's one fountain instead of two, although it's probably the most complex fountain on the Greenway. And there's a lot of specialty paving there as well, and the light blades are a complex lighting system. So I think the North End and the Wharf District are comparable in that way, although the Wharf District takes a similar amount of stuff and spreads it over 4 parcels, whereas the North End, I think, compresses it into 2. So I would say the North End and the Wharf District are similar in this regard. I mean, we talked about it, at board meetings and at Wharf District community meetings. We talked extensively about all the work that we have done at various points on the Rings Fountain. Major effort by Bob's staff to lift off 100,000 pounds of pavers and fix everything that was under there and so on. The lights around the Rings Fountain are bedevil Bob and his staff. The step lights on parcel 15 from the Rings Fountain down to that lawn are like the North End Freedom Trail lights, not working. It isn't the same light, unfortunately. Almost nothing is the same given the number of designers that worked on it, but it's the same condition. There's an old light embedded in the ground and it doesn't work despite various efforts to change things out. And so there's a wholesale replacement of those that is needed. So the North End and the Wharf District are similar in that regard. Chinatown is at a lower level of finish. It is one, though, that I think we would all agree, though that park has not come as far as the rest of the parks in terms of horticulture filling in and other things because of the social challenges that are there. Stu's staff has replaced some planting beds 5 times. Put the plants in, a year later, they're all dead, put more plants in. We've actually tried things this fall. We put in a hoop rail fence there and trying to a small physical and psychological barrier to going in to the plant beds. So, the Fort Point Channel Parks in Dewey Square were a temporary condition. They don't have that much power. They don't have granite. The Fort Point Channel Parks aren't even paved in the case of Parcel 19. So each of the parks has sort of different situations. In some ways, stuff is breaking here because there's a lot of stuff. Does that seem?
Yeah, and I would also say that in Chinatown Park in particular, the lighting there alone, we've had more problems with the lights there than in any other area of the Greenway. All of the lights in the North End we've been able to maintain, fix when they do break. There's one type of light in Chinatown Park where we just stopped fixing them because it was prohibitively expensive, and we've gone to replacing all the guts in them with a much simpler LED setup that's a lot cheaper, a lot easier to maintain. So, also the other thing I wanted to mention was, and although I'm having a hard time even in my own mind to say how much this really affects the hardscape elements that we're going to be repairing and replacing in the North End, but the North End those 2 parcels are intensely used. You can say that about some other areas too, like Chinatown Park is pretty intensely used as well, but I would say per square foot you get more visitors to North End Park than just about anywhere else.
There was a point I wanted to make. In operations, the water features are really where we spend the most amount of money. And the North End, you think the 2 parks in the North End Park at least, not including 12 and 13, are really all fountain. And if they're not all fountain, they're also the boxwood beds, which we're spending a lot of money to repair as well. We recently took on Armenian Heritage Park. That's another very highly built park. 2 fountains, lots of granite, lots of complicated granite, lots of benches. That requires a lot of our upkeep. As Jesse said, 4 Point Channel, those were development parcels. There's no electricity, no park lighting. I don't even have a trash barrel in those parks. So they really don't get any of our funding other than we do spend money on horticulture.
Coming soon.
It is coming soon. But it is, water features take a lot of maintenance money, a lot of repair money. It's where a lot of our budget goes.
Because I was curious if the 2 North End parcels were really, misdesigned compared to the others, or if they're all at the same level of hit or miss, or if this is just the way it is in all parks, and you just have to do this amount. But because, I was taken by looking at some of those light fixtures. I mean, who in this winter environment really thinks that embedded LED lights in a paved walkway are going to last any amount of time? I mean, what a nutty idea is that?
The manufacturer.
Well, who is probably in Shenzhen or something like that, where it never gets below, 30 degrees centigrade. So, it's crazy.
I will say, I have 3 little kids. The North End parks are my family's favorite for being more protected from the street than the Wharf District parks or Dewey Square or Chinatown. It has, for the lack of shade that we talk about, there is a fabulous fountain, and there is, boy, those lawns get really used by sunbathers. I mean, this room talks about shade. I think if you went out and took a vote in the park, most people would say, this is such nice sun. They may all be getting skin cancer, but I think that the parks are really quite nice. Because there was a high level of finish, and because the dig was in cost-cutting mode, and so on, I think that you do an incredibly complicated, expensive project, and you're right at the tail end, and you are one of the higher level finished parks, you may suffer some of the challenges of things like the custom bench that we're now replacing, or the leak in the fountain that they used kind of a Band-Aid repair that fell apart as soon as the warranty was out. I hope in 5 years we're not talking about as much breaking, because we'll address the things with the right construction and the right approach now. Why are the boxwood beds themselves not so healthy? The boxwoods were planted in a double row, which means when you shear them, you shear too close to the center. So they spent twice as much money to put in a double row for something that its care leads to its deterioration over time. Where we're putting in boxwood now, we're putting in a single row. Hopefully that therefore won't happen. The vetch that's a contamination there came in the original soils. That happens. I don't mean to sort of blame anybody. Like, could have happened anywhere. It happened to happen here. So.
I'm sure your staff probably already aware of it, but I just continue to watch the walkway, the Salem walkway extension that gets over to the Haymarket through Parcel 8. There's certainly some paving issues there that are turning into trip hazards. I don't know if it's just a weird split in some of the granite cobbles, but I'm going to guess there's at least 3 or 4 trip hazards that are there right now that I'm sure will only get worse over time with water and everything else getting in those that should be at least on a radar. That's a really highly traveled area, and to have something happen there, like I said, it would never be big because it's not around traffic zones, but it's certainly an easy place for somebody to take a fall in the middle of that walkway if they're not watching where they walk.
And you mean the walkway, not the crosswalk, right?
Right, this is in the curved walkway that gets you through Parcel 8.
I mean, yeah, we are aware, maybe not of every single instance on the Greenway, but I've seen more heaving this winter than I've ever seen before.
This isn't really a heaving. This is actually the granite cobbles that are, I don't know, like 4x8 or 6x8, but it's actually split. There's probably a good inch on at least 3 or 4 of those pieces. I don't know if a piece of snow removing device caught at an edge or something else along there caught at an edge, but it's actually, the granite is gone.
So this is the Freedom Trail?
No, this is on the curved walk that goes through Parcel 8.
Where
the Freedom Trail is,
yeah. We actually purchased new granite bricks, basically the size of a brick.
Yeah.
So that's on our list to remove the ones that have failed and replace them.
Yeah, I mean, there's not very many, but the ones that are there, there's
a couple
definitely
that shipped we know of, and we already have ordered them.
We have them in stock.
I love it when I have no idea what you're talking about, and yet these people are so on top of it. Not only do they know what you're talking about, they've already ordered it. It's on the plan to get fixed.
Is that paper 32?
You paid for it.
Okay, so I'll take my $10 now.
I have just 2 quick questions, Jesse. But first, let me just say I live on North Street, a block down from the Greenway. So like many of my neighbors, I consider the North End parcel as my front yard. So thanks for the great yard work you guys are doing. But my first question is, like things like Sean just pointed out, is there a an app or an email address or something where, you know, we're in the parks every day because we live here. If we see stuff, who can we tell it to?
Sure, so, I mean, the easiest to remember is info@rosekennedygreenway.org, or simpler if you're typing it, info@rfkgc.org, Rose Fitzgerald Kennedy Greenway Conservancy, RFKGC. So info at, Daryl, we've celebrated many people over here, we haven't celebrated Daryl. Daryl does IT and Greenway systems and so on for us, so he monitors info and forwards things out to the appropriate person. So that's the best kind of single, easy to remember contact. We're all basically first initial, last name at rosekennedygreenway.org. So you can send them to me, you can send them to anybody here.
You also have your two neighborhood folks. So.
Oh, you want those emails? Okay.
I mean, you know,
I just want to make sure they're going to the right place. Because, I mean, the City of Boston has the Citizens Connect app that's great. When you see something, you can just phone it in.
Yeah, I mean, I would much rather get them directly, but we also get Citizens Connect forwarded to us.
So if we reference the Greenway and Citizens Connect, it'll get to you?
Yeah, if you take, when you are on Citizens Connect and you say this is the location,
yeah.
If it's on the Greenway, it comes to me.
Oh, good.
If it's not on the Greenway, they sometimes send it to us.
Yeah, a lot that are on the Greenway also come to me, which takes a lot.
Yeah.
But certainly if they're on the Greenway and you spell it out that this is on the Rose Kennedy Greenway, it gets sent directly to us.
And my second question has to do with, I'm very happy to hear that with the new lease that the Greenway is going to take stewardship of some of the more neglected parcels like 12 and 6 and 5 and 13 and even the smaller.
All those actually were in our lease already. They just have their own handicaps. But yes, I take the point generally. Yes, some neglected areas.
We've been waiting a long time for the North End to get reconnected with the rest of downtown and the North End parcels to get reconnected to the Greenway, the rest of the Greenway. The comment letter that you referenced to Mass DOT, is that posted on your website?
Sorry. I don't know that it is, but I mean, I'm happy to email it to everybody, and you know, it could be, yeah. In fact, I emailed it to a handful of people as a sample, encouraging them to comment, and so, you know, we're happy to distribute it.
Thank you.
Victor.
I apologize in advance for returning to the Pergola, but I can't resist. The slide you showed of comparative heights of the Greenway Pergola versus Crystal Thomas Park, and did I hear that the objective of that is to show that it's too high to grow vines on?
This was to give context for both the fact that these are wood, which is a better growing material, and that they are lower, making it somewhat easier to grow up and over. I wouldn't say that this is simply dry. I'm not expert enough, but we actually we miss Linda Jonash for this moment, who actually this slide. We dedicated an intern to doing a whole bunch of the research that Ford you were talking about on this and a bunch of facts.
The proportions are wrong on the Christopher Columbus Pergola on that slide.
How wrong?
Well, it's probably off by 3 feet in terms of height. It's an 8-foot radius that you have on the arched part, and so
this should be 8 rather than 14.5.
So it should be 18 feet 2 inches. Actually, I think it's more like 14 feet or so. But I'll let you know after we put the lights on. If I run out of light, I'll see.
And I bet since this was an intern, they went out there and
I think it also,
but
though,
it's a great slide, though.
I think it also maybe is that our ability to plant is on one side only here. And to get any kind of plant material to go up that and then across is a lot more difficult than either of the other two pergolas that the material can grow from either side.
Jesse, I agree with you because I recall Linda Jonash actually doing a study to see if in fact they could put vines or whatever. She was very good. She was very dedicated to that. And she said that it was really not the way to go and it wouldn't last. Couldn't get it. I remember her saying that.
We actually, you asked 2 questions, we answered the second, but I think we somehow moved on. But I think it would be, We have some information about this. Perhaps some of it needs a little bit of correction, but you know, happy to sort of share that information to facilitate a conversation about what could happen. I do think that it is very, you know, the idea of maybe we should get rid of it is an idea that should be contemplated, but that's a very big undertaking and a very significant design change and so on. And relative to other things that several $1 million might be spent on within the North End parks themselves, you know, I think that's a prioritization question. But Victor, you
well, just
look like
let me finish, and maybe this should be addressed to Ford. And his new working group on the pergola.
Or Robbins,
and that is, if the pergola is too high, instead of getting rid of it, how about chopping it off and putting the teak wood on the top, which will be cooler in the summertime, and then planting vines.
So I'm not the right person to respond to design.
No, I'm just throwing it into the conversation.
The creativity of ideas about this. I mean, somebody suggested, what if you covered the top with solar panels? I mean, you know, you can obviously throw out all sorts of ideas of things that could happen, right? And getting the facts on the table so that we understand which of these are possible and what's involved in them. And I think thinking realistically about the possibility to get funding for these type of things. That I am delighted that we've raised $200,000 for, you know, as you characterized it, and sort of as I did, you know, some fixes. You know, repurposing the pergola that appears in a whole bunch of spectacular photos framing the Custom House Tower might be a hard fundraising thing. Other questions, pergola or otherwise?
Yeah, this is an easy one. Just as you get into the painting and the improvements, is there a way that you could work with Phil or some way to get, this is not a very big representation of the neighborhood, and then those parks obviously are really well liked, and I just would hate the thought of people not knowing that they can't use that on a given weekend, or if you could let people know what's going on within those spaces as you're doing that work, it'd probably be really beneficial.
Phil and Matt Conti
Yeah,
are great.
whatever it takes to kind of get the word out.
Yeah, and that's where Michael, who you may or may not have met, you know, is our community liaison and also coordinating communications for us now. And so that both the dialogue with the community unified with the what we are talking about, it's sort of it's all Michael. So.
As I've done, I'm glad to publish anything.
Thank you.
In a positive manner.
Even better.
Just wanting that change.
To Jesse's point, I've got my business cards with my cell phone on them for anybody that wants one tonight. So we're very accessible.
Thank you.
Sure. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.